So recently a video of mine has been somewhat blowing up. It's by far my most popular video and was actually one of my first videos I made when I first started this channel. So if you haven't checked it out, you should, and if you already have watched it, thank you. I really appreciate all the love I got for the video, and all the comments and engagement was really nice. I've been trying to get to like 500 subs for a minute, and I'm really getting close, and I owe most of that to that video. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all this actually has a lot to do with why I'm making this video, because while I received a lot of love from my Rooney video, I also received some warranted criticism, mostly caused by me giving Rooney some credit for an invention he just didn't make. Because I said that he invented the Euro step, which many people let me know was wrong, and that the move was actually being done way before Rooney started doing it in the 90s. So with this being brought to my attention, I went and did some research in hopes to correct my mistake, as well as learn the true history of the Euro step. And to be honest, I was extremely shocked by where the move most likely comes from. And honestly, I see why the details on the origins of the move is so murky. So with that all being said, let's get into the history of the Euro step. So before I get into the history of the move and where it came from, I think it's best that I explain the move and why it took so long to become popular, as the move was first being done in the 60s and 70s, but didn't really get popular until the early 2000s. The reason for this is because during the early days of basketball, referees were known to call travel violations on those who did this move. This would make sense as the move requires you to pick up your dribble and take 2 steps. One step to bait your defender into guarding in one direction before you fake them out and move in the opposite direction. It's one of the best moves when trying to get to the rim, but I can see why most referees, when they first saw it, thought it was a travel, because in basketball you're not supposed to move after picking up your dribble, and honestly travel calls will still happen even after the move became pretty popular. But the NBA fixed this in 2009 when it implemented the 2-step rule, and most modern referees are so familiar with the move that they rarely ever call travel, even though the move has evolved quite significantly, as modern NBA players use what they call the gather step to initiate the move, making it look like they're taking 3 steps when they do the Euro step. So now that I've given an explanation of the move and why the move took so long to gain popularity, let's talk about where the move comes from. Now, before I get too deep into the origins of this move, I want to say that there is no 100% definitive proof of who invented this move and where it comes from. And since this is the case, I'm going to speak on 3 possibilities of who invented the move. And in my personal opinion, I think the 3rd possibility is actually the most likely candidate for who invented the move. But before I get into the 3 possibilities, let's clear up who didn't make the move. And that was my guy, Rooney. Now, I originally gave him credit for the invention of the move, and this was because during my research for the video I made on him, it was said that he brought the move to the NBA in the 90s, hence why they called it the Euro step. But this is not correct, as there is footage of NBA players doing the move in the 60s and 70s, but at the time the move was just called a side step. So to be clear, Rooney is not the inventor of the Euro step. And now that we've crossed that out, let's talk about the real candidates for the invention of the Euro step. So the first potential candidate isn't a person, it's a place, and that place is Yugoslavia. The saying goes that the Euro step originated in European basketball leagues during the 1960s and was especially popular in Yugoslavia, and that's pretty much it. The first theory for the origin of the Euro step doesn't really tell you much about how the Europeans came up with the move, or who even did the move in the European leagues. And since this is the case, I feel like this is the least likely place that the move was originated, because it has the least concrete story of how it got started. And you know, out of 3 main possibilities, this is the weakest origin story for all of them. So no offense to the people from Yugoslavia or, you know, European people. Like, I have nothing bad to say about y'all. I'm just saying that there's not a lot of information on how this move was originated in your area, just rather that the people of Yugoslavia was doing this move. And with that being the case, I think that this is the weakest argument that the move was created in Yugoslavia or in Europe, because it's just not enough information to make that the case. Which moves me to my second theory, which is the most popular answer for who actually created the Euro step, which is Elgin Baylor. This is actually a pretty good theory that I can honestly say has a lot backing it up. The reason I say this is because Elgin Baylor was a revolutionary player for the game of basketball, as he was an undersized forward who only stood at 6'5", but his game was immaculate, as his style was way before his time, and he would actually go on to inspire many stars like Julius Irving, David Thompson, and Magic Johnson, who are going to inspire the next generation of NBA players. This is actually a pretty good theory that I can honestly say has a lot backing it up. The reason I say this is because Elgin Baylor was a revolutionary player for the game of basketball, as he was an undersized forward who only stood at 6'5", but his game was immaculate, as his style of play was way before his time, and would actually go on to inspire many stars like Julius Erving, David Thompson, and Magic Johnson, who will go on to inspire the next generation of NBA players who will make the game what it is today. The way that Baylor was able to do this was with his play above the rim, as he was known for his acrobatic finishes and dunks. David Thompson was once quoted saying that you will see him go up and just wait for everyone to come down because he can just hang in the air longer than everyone else. Now, while all these things that he did, such as the no-look spin, penetrate, look one way and spin the other way without looking, and high spins off the glass right through the net, and just all the tricks that he had in his bag is common for the modern player, it wasn't very common during his time in the league, as the game was a lot more vanilla and players played on the floor, not up in the sky where Baylor was taking it. So it doesn't shock me that a player with a Duffy bag full of tricks and a mind full of creativity will come out with such a killer fake out move like the Euro step, which at the time he did was just called the side step. And the thing that makes his case even stronger is that there's actual footage of him doing the move during the 60s. So taking everything into consideration, I think that it's a fair assumption to believe that Elgin Baylor made the move. And I can see why he's the popular answer for the inventor of the Euro step. But while he might be the popular answer, I still think there is one more option for being the person responsible with the creation of the Euro step. And I also believe while there is so much controversy behind the history of the move, as well as its creation, has a lot to do with this man being most likely responsible for its creation. And that man is Fidel Castro, the former ruler of Cuba. Now, this one really caught me off guard because when I think of Fidel Castro, I think of the dictator of Cuba, the CIA, and all the attempts they made on his life and everything that revolves around him in a political sense. And to keep it a buck, I would have never associated basketball with Fidel Castro. But to my surprise, the man actually had a love for the game. The 6'3" Castro was a fiercely competitive player during his high school years, devoting more of his energies to basketball, baseball, track and field, and table tennis than to academic pursuits, as he relished sports because it gave him a chance to show off his athletic prowess and demonstrate that he could excel at anything. One of his bodyguards was even quoted saying that Castro never hesitated to organize a game and that it was out of question for him to lose a game. He loved the game of basketball so much that he occasionally employed metaphors using the game of basketball to make his arguments and treaties more understandable to the average citizens. He did this because he believed that basketball had powerful symbolism and even training value for young revolutionaries because of the speed, agility, and stamina, as well as cunning, lightning quick tactics and strategic thinking that the game requires, which is very similar to the requirement of guerrilla warfare, which was deployed by many of the people fighting on his side as he started to take over Cuba. Now, the thing that inspired him the most to create the move he called the step was an early writing from Jose Marti, where Marti was talking about the amount of cunning that was required to be successful in guerrilla warfare. During this writing, he mentioned that the revolutionary movement should be similar to those of football players, aka soccer players, in order to evade prison, using the metaphor that footballers may step in one direction, leading their opponent to believe that they have shown their hand, but then immediately pivot, moving forward but in the opposite direction. This is exactly what the Euro step is, and Castro implemented a move from those metaphors, and we know this because Che Guevara wrote in his journal in 1962 speaking on the move and somewhat criticizing the move. Even though he said it was effective, he didn't like the symbolism behind the move. Now, in 1962 will be the earliest documentation of this move. That still doesn't explain how the move made its way outside of Cuba, as most people wouldn't have been able to see or play basketball with Castro. Well, the answer for that is that in the 1960s, many leftists and civil rights activists made trips to Cuba, in addition to several other representatives from other nations around the world, and it is widely assumed that through these meetings that Castro's innovation spread throughout the world, as visitors to Cuba returned home with greater knowledge of Caribbean economics and cutting-edge basketball techniques. This to me is the most solid origin story for the creation of the Euro step, because it is so well detailed and everything is documented so well. The only argument against this being the case is that it's called the Euro step even though Cuba isn't in Europe. But even that has a simple answer, as a player who was first given credit for doing the move was a European in Rooney. And while Manu is no European, he is more so credited with the move's popularization, not its creation. Now that's basically everything that's known about the history of the Euro step. Hopefully y'all enjoyed the video, and if y'all made it this far, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all on the next video for GBD. Peace.